Okay, assalamu alaikum. I guess this might be the last lecture we can have in this chapter. Then next week we can move to the last chapter we have in this semester. Partnership, we had it last time as general partnership, and I did say that partnership meaning it's a business entity. And in this business entity we have partners who are shareholders, partners having shares, investing money in such entity. And as we can see in this diagram, this is the first partnership, first type. We call it GB, general partnership. In general partnership, as you can see, that we have only GBs. All what we have, general partners. We don't have limited. We have no limited partners. We have to look at all of these points step by step. In general partnership, we have only general partners. And most people go for such type because it's easy to establish. And you don't have to pay double taxation. You pay tax once only. So it's easy to establish, easy to run. You have a small number of people united together, having their own partnership. They trust each other. They have something in common, and you don't pay much tax. It's only once you do pay tax. The only disadvantage we have in this type is the unlimited liability. Unlimited liability, in which you might lose not only the amount of money you invested, but you might lose more than this. You might lose your even private money. This is the first type, and this is the original type of partnership. Once we move to second type, which is called limited partnership. Look at the first one, it's GB. All of them are GBs. Like this class here, you might imagine that all of you are general partners. You have unlimited liability. You have the ability to act on behalf. If we look at the difference between all types, we look at the difference in agency, liability, and management. 3 points. The main difference between the three types are 3 points. In GBs, the first type, general partnership, all of them, all partners are GBs. They can manage the partnership, and all of them have unlimited liability. So we call it joint and several liability. Joint and several liabilities. We can ask all of them to be liable for any action of this partnership, and we can ask any one of them. It's up to you. And agency. Now each one of them is a partner, and each one of them is an agent at the same time. This is in the first case. All of them, GBs, are agents for the same partnership, and all of them can manage, and all of them have unlimited liability. In the second type, it's not the same. Second type, it's a mixed between GBs and LBs. We call it limited partnership. It's much similar to general partnership, but we have some differences, of course. And this LBs, limited partnership, we have to have at least one GB and at least one LB. When I say GB, it means general partner. LB, limited partner. We have to have a minimum one LB and minimum one GB. Why? Because to be able to establish such an entity, it's something in the structure. It's a combination between two types of partners. So I would not be able to have all of them one color, one type. No, we have to mix in between. Now we have to look at the difference between GBs and LBs at the same entity. You say that like half of you LBs and half GBs. What can you do and what can't you do? We'll look at these points again: agency, liability, and management. Look at the GBs at the beginning, general partners. What do you think? Can they manage? Can they act? What can they do? I need somebody to read this for me, this here. Can you? Okay, go on.
As in a general partnership, the GBs have management control.
That's number one. They can manage. GBs, they can manage. But LBs will not be able to manage.
Share the right to use partnership property.
They can use the property of the partnership.
Share the profits of the firm in a predefined
proportions
and have joint and several liability. For the debts of the partnership.
Okay, these are 3 points. These points exist with and connected only with
General partner.
GBs, general partners. And when it comes to LBs, they are at the same entity. They will not be able to do the same thing. They are not. And here, if you look even at the agency, again, just focusing on agency. GBs can be agents. Here, GBs here are equal. Same. They have the same responsibility, same ability to act as an agent. They have the authority, actual authority. They can act as an agent for the LBs, for the limited partnership. At the same time, limited partners at the same entity, they will not act as agents. They will not. As we're going to see later here, in the next slide or two, look at the LBs. What the LBs can do, they would have limited liability. Like in limited liability company, like in corporations, LBs would have the ability to act, to work as only partners, but they will not be able to make a transaction on behalf of the rest of them. They will have limited liability. They invest some money because they want to have some gains, some profit. Having limited liability, the same like what we had in the past when I was explaining the limited liability company or joint stock companies. They have limited liability for shareholders, not for the company itself, but for the shareholders. But they have no management authority. They cannot manage. It's not. All what they do, just get some money, like say 5 of you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, the first 2 lines, unlimited. They're having unlimited liability because they are general partners. But the rest of you just invested money because you want to get some profit. You want to make business, but you don't want to have any responsibility. You don't like to manage. So that's fine, like any company. But some people choose this type because it's more secure. Small number of people, 10, 20, 5, 2, 50. There's a small number of people. You can know the people who invest the money. You know them by name. You know them by nature. And then you can trust them. You can invest your money in a type of business you would like to invest your money in. At the same time, you don't lose much. You know the maximum you can lose. The maximum here, for those two, LBs and LPs, having limited liability. They know the maximum they can lose is the amount of money they invested. And at the end of the day, they can get shares, profit, income as equal to dividend in the joint stock company, in corporation. It's equal to that, usually defined in the partnership agreement. This is usually defined exactly how much each one can get based on the amount of money they invested. Now, this second type has to be distinguished from the third type because they're not the same. Second and third, each one of them, each type of these partnership is completely different from the second type. It's not completely. We have some points are similar, but mainly we look at 3 points: liability, management, and agency. We have difference between all types. And this is why we have to look at limited liability. We are still in the second type, limited partnership. In this second type, we have to look at the limited liability. Why people have to go from 1 till 2? This is number 1. Type number 1, 2, 3, 4. Some people choose to have GPs, general partnership. Some people choose to have limited partnership because we have more advantages here. The same thing, it's not difficult to establish. It's easy. Small number of people. But the extra point we have here, that some people go for such second type because of the limited liability. You can lose your ability to manage. You don't want to manage. You don't want to be an agent, but you want to limit your ability, your responsibility on any act, any transaction was made by the partnership. This is why we have to be clear from the beginning. GPs and LPs in this time, they have to specify exactly next to their names who is the GP and who is the LP. Like here, First of all, at the time of registration, when we register, when you submit the file to the Ministry of Economics, to the company house, asking them to register a new company in the name of partnership, we have 20 people, 5 of them GBs and 15 are LBs. We have to write next to the name of each one of them if he is or she is an LB or GB. We have to specify. Why is this? Is it important? Why do you have to specify from the beginning who is the LB and who is the GB?
To know his liability.
Yes, to know liability.
To know who one of them can manage and have actual authority.
Yes, it's about liability, responsibility, and when you deal with the customers, you have to be clear. The second way in which we have to make sure that limited liability is clear, and GBs and LBs know from the beginning which one has limited liability and which one has the unlimited liability. We have to disclose such information to the customers. The customers have to know exactly who is the LB and who is the GB. Here, as you can see, other parties dealing with customers, dealing with other parties, so that such parties are on notice. Notice that individual negotiating with them is an LB. This point have a legal consequence. This point has a legal impact. This means the customer would have to know from the beginning if this customer deal with LB or GB, because if it's a GB I'm dealing with as a customer, then this GB will take the full responsibility, and this GB would be able to deal with me as an agent. If he was an LB, limited partner, then he's not authorized to deal with the customers. LBs are not agents, so why should I deal with that LB? I might get in trouble. I might not have guarantees for the transaction I'm doing with that LB. So we have to make sure that all customers knew from the beginning the status of the partner they are dealing with. Third point, limited liability have to be identified in the documents. And mainly we have a small number of partners. In such partnership we have a small number of partners. Then if it's a small, then we have to identify in the documents. Let's say that we have 5 people, 5 partners, 5. 2 of them LBs and 3 GBs. Then we have to state next to their names in the documents most likely have to be clear that those have the status of LBs and those individuals have the status of GBs. That's because we have to separate between liabilities, responsibilities of both categories. They are not the same. They have completely different tasks to do, as we can see, as we have said now here. And in the last point here, we discussed the case in which sometimes LBs, in this second type, LBs can act as agents. In fact, those LBs are not entitled to work as agents. Do you get the point? Do you understand me? Only GBs here, general partners, Sharik al-Am, those have the right to be agents. They can act as agent. They can sell, they can buy, they can make transactions. But LBs, they cannot make a transaction. The question is, if we have a transaction was done by an LB, what can we do? One of you, as an LB, has made a transaction with the customers, and he or she is not entitled to make such transaction. What can we do? Now we have the transaction done with the customer. What shall we do, the rest of us, partners? Shall we accept it? Shall we refuse it? What can we do?
This LB has to take some consequences of this action, so he has to take the punishment maybe by the other GBs and the acceptance of LBs.
Well, we have a case in which we have a customer and he paid money to get the goods, can we void the transaction which we had with that customer, that transaction which was made by LB? Or can we keep it, leave it as it is?
Keep it until after the end of the transaction we can.
Yes. We have two choices. Two. Either you can accept it, in which we call it ratification. Yeah. مصادقة. Okay, leave it. It's fine. We accept the action or the transaction which was made by an LB. And in this case, it will be a de facto situation. And we have given the authority to this LB. Exceptionally, we have given this authority, the power to the LB for the transaction he did or she did. Then this will call it ratification. The second situation, it's a de facto as well, but even if we don't accept it, even if we do not authorize such a transaction which was made by an LB, we would have to keep the transaction between our LB and the customer, because we have to keep transactions going in the market, and specifically if we make sure here that the transaction was made in good faith, was made by the customer in good faith, then we will not be able to end such a transaction. And we call it here agency by stubble, and we had it before. It becomes like an agency by stubble. It's an agency by de facto, as if the LB has the agency, but in fact he's got no agency. In fact, this LB, limited partner, شريك محدود المسؤولية, limited partner, he has no agency, but we assume as if there is an agency just to keep the transaction with the customer, and it's called an agency by stubble. We have to look back. This type, the second type, LB, limited partnership, it's one of the oldest partnerships. It's very old. Some scholars said this type goes back to the Roman Empire. This before century. It's more than 2,000 years ago, 2,300 years ago. It's very old time. And looking here at the Heidi, what's Heidi? The best days, the high days of the Roman Empire, they had such type, and this used to be equivalent to today's major corporations. Long time ago, more than 2,000 years ago, at the Roman Empire, they had limited partnership, and for them, that limited partnership, it was as equal as today's major corporations. Do you get the point? Do you understand it?
Yes.
Yeah? Sure? Hánي? Good. Now, we have to have in this type, even in that past, at least one partner with limited liability, and one at least with unlimited liability. So one partner at least with a limited liability, and one at least with unlimited liability. Not only in the Roman Empire, even looking at Italy, medieval Italy. At that time, we had something that was called the commenda, which meant, what does it mean? Can you read it? Business.
Business organizations which was generally used for finance, maritime trade in a
Okay. This type, which was called commenda in Italy in a medieval time, it was the same type what we have today, which is called limited partnership, in which we have business organization, and was used for finance, but mainly for maritime. What's maritime? Sea, water, بحري, تجارة بحرية. It's for financing maritime trade. In commenda, we have the ship. Imagine that in the past. Nowadays, it's easy to buy from any country. People buying things from China, bringing them to Palestine. But when they buy the goods, they can ship from China to Palestine, it's called cargo. Cargo, it can be by plane, it can be by ship, but most likely shipping. بالإبحار, سفينة, most likely. And this was in the past even, not only today. Because one of the best means to develop finance and business was in the past is using ships to transfer goods from one country to another. And at that time we're having the owner of the ship and people on land having partnerships. This partnership was called limited partnership. You have to have at least one GB. That GB has to be on the ship, on the board of the ship, because that ship moving from one country to the second country, and that person, he's looking after the goods. Then this person would have to have unlimited liability. He will be fully responsible for everything he's got. People on land, al-ard, when having limited liability, having limited partner, LPs. Because it's fine, I give you the money or the goods, but it's with you. Now you have the trust, and you can move it from one country to the second country. So this is why we have such type in the past. Even if you look back in the 1807 Napoleonic Code in 1807, this code reinforced the same idea, and this was used in the United States and in Britain, enforcing such code. And if you look back, 1807 Napoleonic Code, this Napoleonic Code was taken, as we had in the first chapter, if you still remember that, when we spoke about Islamic law, Islamic commercial law. I said the Ottomans took the Napoleonic Code, the commercial code, from France, and they had it transferred to the Ottoman Empire. And that was in 1850. In 1850, Palestine was one state in the Ottoman Empire, and from that time up to now, we still use the same codes. We still use the same codes, which are out of date, not suitable for our life, but still people using them up to this moment. Is it fine? Move to the next time. How do you find it up to now? Okay? Sure? Now, we have two main, look at me now. Two main types. Number 1 and number 2. Number 3 and number 4, something new modifications. So number 3 is modification of number 1. And number 4 is a modification of number 2. In fact, in the past only what we had, and even in most countries, we have only general partnership and limited partnership. But today we have in the United States, in new entities, we have LLP, limited liability partnership. And then we have limited liability, limited partnership. Let's look at the third type, limited liability partnership. Limited liability partnership, we call it LLP. And it has elements of partnership and corporation. See, look at number 1, what we had. Only GBs, general partners. And they used to manage and to have unlimited liability, and they were agents. Now what we have in the same time, we just modified it. How did we modify it? All of them switch from GBs to LBs. We don't have GBs, only we have LBs, limited partnership. This means to me that each one of them has limited liability. See, this is the main point, the main focus is liability. How much am I going to be responsible for? Am I going to be responsible for the faults of the company? Should I pay for any mistake was made by partnership or not? In this time, people choose not to pay. Each one of them would be responsible only for the amount of money they invested. Each one of them, I only pay money and I only invest it to get the profit. If I lose, I will lose the amount of money. But in this time, no. If I lose, not only I will lose or I invested, I would lose everything I would have at home even. I might even sell my car, my house, to pay the debt. What about the management? Now, number one, we said here, now we don't have unlimited. We don't have GBs. We have limited liability. Management, can you read it from Samiha? Yeah.
As a result, the LP is more
suitable
for business where all investors wish to take an active role in management. The partners have the right to manage their business directly.
Okay, simple. You can see now, even in this time, despite the fact we have all of them LPs, all of the partners are limited partners, but they can manage. Because if they cannot manage, who can manage? If all of you are limited partners, and if you cannot manage, who can manage? Can we bring someone from outside this partnership? No. So you can have limited liability, and you have to manage, because no one else can manage such an entity. Now this type looks like a limited liability company. It looks like small corporations, like even in the UK, as you can see that in the UK here, they call it UK LLB. It's equal to corporation today. And even sometimes they call it here, they call it what? Or they register it, specifically registered and legislated as corporate body. Not as, because corporate body will have shares. By the way, that in partnership, we don't have shares. We have proportion, في حصة. But in companies, in general, as corporation and limited liability company, we have shares. And this is by law. We have to have share. And we have to have unit of money. The share is equal a unit of money, which can be anything you like. It can be $10, 10, 20, 50, it's up to you. This is number 4. Number 5. So number 3 is a modification of number 1. It's a modification. So here people can manage, they can be agents, but the only thing we have changed from number 1 to number 3 is liability. It was here unlimited, it becomes limited liability. Number 4, it's a modification of number 2. We have GBs and LBs, and the same thing we have between number 2 and number 4, GBs and LBs. It's a modification of limited partnership, in which we have GBs and LBs. Now we have to look inside it. What's going on? What's happening? We look at the agency, liability, management. What do you think? Who can manage?
General partner.
Are you sure? GBs. What about LBs? No. Now GBs can manage, but LBs cannot manage. GBs can be agents, LBs will not be agents. But all of them would have limited liability. All of them would have limited liability. In the past, number 1, number 2, the same thing. Number 2 and number 4 is the same, except one modification. See, the only modification we have here, number 1 and number 2, it's on liability. Liability. They can do the same. Number 4 can do the same in number 2. Limited liability, limited partnership. It's the same. It's one copy of limited partnership, but we have changed one point in which GBs and LBs, both of them, would have limited liability. It becomes here, it becomes equal. It's not equal. It looks like the third type. Even number 4, it looks like the third type with some differences. Now, I guess you should know the differences between all of them. Looking at 3 points: agency, liability, management, and looking at the type of partners. Are they GBs or are they LBs? Limited liability. Now, let's go back again to look at all of these types. What we have 10 types to look at. 10 business entities. Number 1 was consumer cooperative. We had it last time, last lecture. Today we have 4 types, 4 new types. All of them partnerships, but we have 4 different types. GB, LB, LLB, LLP. I just need somebody of you, if you can understand, if you can reflect what I said. At least, like, you see, if you have any question in the exam asking you to differentiate between LPs, okay, LPs in limited partnership and LPs in general partnership.
LPs in limited partnership, they don't act like agents. For the LPs in the triple LLP, they do act like...
No, they don't act.
No,
They're the same,
they're the
exactly.
same.
LPs in number 2 and LPs in number 4 are the
GBs.
same. We have a difference between GBs in limited partnership and GBs in limited liability limited partnership. What's that difference?
About the liabilities in limited partnership, general partnership have an authority and agency, but and have several liabilities. But
Yes.
in the limited LLP, the general partnership have no liability.
Good, good. Okay, let's look at number 1 then. Number 1 and number 2. Number 1 we have general partners, and number 3 we have limited partners. They look the same in some aspects, but they are not the same in many other aspects. What's the difference between them? They say that GBs in general partnership and LBs in limited liability partnership, where the points they can meet and the points they can be different.
They are equal managed and they have unlimited liability. And LPs, they can manage, but they have a limited liability. No, the liability is the management.
GBs and LLBs can management.
They can manage. That's
and
what both of them can manage. Yes.
Can be an agent, but the difference is GB have unlimited liability and LLB have limited liability.
LBs have limited liability. That's good. I guess you understand now what we have. Anyone have any difficulty? It can be confusing sometimes, isn't it? It can be a little bit confusing. Once you focus on these points, it would be fine. Move to the next slide. Yes. Although we have 5 slides left in this chapter to finish. This is, now look at this type. Limited liability company, one of the easiest, simple company, small size company. Small size company, it's called limited liability company, LLC. This limited liability company, it's a legal form of business entity. It's a legal form of business entity offering limited liability to its owners, shareholders. It looks like corporation, but it's a small size. And because it's a small size, we call it limited liability company. Limited liability company, similar to corporation. We have flexible here, more flexible form of ownership. It's up to, mainly here, it's up to the owners. You can limit the number to 5, to 10, to 20, to 50. It's up to you can, but most likely have small here. It's suitable for small companies with limited number of owners. It looks like partnership as well, but it's not partnership because here we have limited liability. Away from these complications, away from all what we have here, these complications. By the way, only few people go for such partnership. Number 4, because it's something new, something not being used in the market much. But most people go for number 1, which is GB, general partnership, and LB, limited partnership. Most people. But number 3 and 4, it's something new, and we don't have it in many countries even. And this is why we have the options, other options, which is limited liability company, in which you can invest your money with a small number of people. You know each other, you have something in common, you trust one another. And this is something easy to establish. Even if you go to the Ministry of Economics to establish such type of company, you find it easy. You find it as a requirement. As a requirement, it's not difficult. Like, I'm always talking about an example. Like, we have some companies so difficult to establish, like publicly traded corporations. It's not easy. Publicly traded corporations, because we invest lots of money and we have many shareholders, thousands of shareholders, and we do have this company or that corporation listed on the stock exchange. So it's so difficult to establish. We need procedures. But in limited liability company, because you have a small number of people, small amount of money invested, it's located in one point in the country, in one city, then it's easy. And these are the advantages. We have, and these points can be questioned in the exam. They can be a question. Talking about the advantage of limited liability company, LLC, one of them is not having the complication. We don't have to have annual meeting, annual general meeting for shareholders. If we have 25 students, and this number, small number, we have LLC, there is no need to have annual general meeting, to have election and talking about the budget. No, because we meet always. Often we meet like once a week, once every few weeks. We have meetings from time to time. This is why there is no need to have general meeting for shareholders. Number two, there is no need to have board of directors. A small size company, board of director, if we have huge number of shareholders, talking sometimes about million shareholders. Some companies you have millions of shareholders. What can you do? Who can manage? And you have to have election to elect board of directors. But this time, because it's a small in number, small in size, there is no need to have board of directors. And you will not lose power anyway. You can keep your power, you can manage, you have authority. And even look at the administration, management. We don't have these complications. In this type, we have less administrative work. Because most likely this size will be located in one small city or one big city. But corporations will be located in many countries, in many states, in many cities. You're having thousands of employees and workers and staff members and senior employees and so on and so forth, and shareholders. Then you have to have administrative work, or paperwork, management committees.
I have a question.
Go on.
When a board of director can lose the power in a corporation?
When can lose?
When can it lose the power?
Well, the power which is given to the board of directors, given at the time of election. Then in the next time, we usually have election once you have the general meeting and you have election. It depends. It might be every 2 years. It can be every 3 years. It depends on the bylaw. Now, by that, having a new election, then by the new election, then you can choose new people. Then that board of director can lose its power and you have someone else to take a place.
So there are no other cases?
Other cases, if someone of them misused, of any of the directors misuse or abuse his position, then there is a question here in which he can stay or not in this board of directors, in which we can ask him to leave or not, and which we can have a committee to investigate. Sometimes you can have a committee to investigate if we make sure that one of them or all that board of directors are not meeting the demands, not meeting the interest of the shareholders, then we can dissolve it. Then we can call for exceptional meeting. This meeting, annual meeting, it can be as soon as we can. In a few weeks, few days time, we can call for a new annual meeting, for a new general meeting as exceptional, and then we can ask for this. We can vote. We can vote to dissolve such board of directors. If we dissolve it, then we can elect a new board of directors. About tax here, it's up to you. You can pay double taxation, you can be taxed once, but most likely people choose to be taxed once. Not like in corporations. In LLC, no double taxation. Be taxed at the personal level. People, shareholders, individuals, get their dividends at the end of the year. And they will pay tax only for that, or on that dividend they have. They have as well limited liability. One of the main advantages is limited liability. And this will not find it in many other entities. But in LLC, we do have limited liability. And this would encourage many people to take part in such entity. I guess if I ask you, like, which one of you like this type, LLC, which one of you like GBs, I will find that most of you would like to go for LLC, because we have many advantages, isn't it? Yes? Maybe not. Even in this type here in this type, in the States, they have one person can have his own company. For me, I think this is exceptional, because in general we have to have at least two people. Any company would like to establish, it would have to have two people at least. Why? Because the name company, the word company, what does it mean? Come from companionship, isn't it? Company, شراكة. More than two people, two or more than two people. Now in this type here, it says that one natural person can have his own company. One you can have. Why? Because you don't want to pay much money if you lose. You want to keep yourself protected, not taking the risk. So the best way for you is to establish LLC. One person. You don't like to invest your money with someone else. I know some people have lots of money and they don't want to share with anyone else. They want to keep this business for their name, in their names. Then in this situation, they can establish LLC in one person's name. And if they lose, they're not going to lose more than the money they invested. Now some scholars are saying in this type LLC, because you have a small number of people like this, we have sometimes one person. What they say, well, we will not be able to separate between the company and the shareholders. You are the shareholders, and we have the company, and there is no separation. You are the company, and the company is you. But some say, well, this is not the case. This is not fair. It's not good. No, we have to separate. You are shareholders, and the company, it has its own name and personality, and the company can act separately, independently, without the need of the shareholders. So in between, still, we have a dispute about this case. Number 7-8, limited company. Limited company. As you have seen in the past slide, was limited liability company, LLC. But this one is limited company. This one is limited. This is limited by law. That one is limited by shareholders. They're limited, but this one is limited by law. How is limited by law? We can know from the beginning, the law will guarantee that this type would have a limited liability. By law, we have a limited liability. We have three types. Within this type, we have three sections, 3 types. Number one, it's called here private, and this one is public. Number one is private company limited by shares. This is a profit. And this one is non-profit. Private company limited by shares. Limited. What we mean by this, the maximum share we have by law is the maximum shares we can use in this company. By law, we can invest in such company £5 million. That's it. This is the maximum have to be. Shares. 5 million shares. 5,000 shares. It depends. Like we have a maximum amount of money can be invested. Limited by shares. We can know from the beginning that this type of companies will have a ceiling. If you had maximum amount of money invested, maximum shares. The second type, we don't have shares. We have guarantees. Such type is limited by guarantees because it's non-profit. It's a charity. And in this first type, we can invest money. We can know how much money we invested, how many shares we have. But in the second type, we don't have shares. We have guarantees only. Like if you would like to establish an NGO, non-governmental organization, you would like to have a charity organization. In this charity organization, you don't have shares, no profit, no money invested. Why? You invest in yourself. in your mind, you invest in public services, you invest in benefit for people, then how can we know how much money this company have? If it's private company limited by guarantee, then we have to give some guarantees. When we establish this, if you go to the Minister of Economics asking them that you would like to establish a non-profit company, they would ask you to state the amount of money, the capital for this company. And you're gonna question it. Why should I state exactly the amount of money we invest, despite the fact it's not an investment, it's not business. But you have to state, assuming like £10,000, £50,000, this is the amount of money. It's a type of guarantee that this company has invested in money, and the board of directors will be responsible to compensate people in the market if this company has lost. Something happened, we have to have some guarantees. It's limited, here limited by shares. We know how many shares we have. We have 10,000 shares, this is the maximum we can lose. This time, we don't have shares, we have these guarantees. The guarantee can be the building, it can be the equipment, the assets, it can be as well the board of directors. We do have board of directors here. They can be a guarantee. They would have to guarantee that this non-profit company, it's not abusing the law. This non-profit company, it's using its own ability to help the people in the society, and not using the money which comes to that company from donors for some people's benefit. Fine? So we have some guarantees but not shares. And the last one, it's public limited. It's limited company, but it's not private, it's public. The same like this one, is the same like number 1 and number 2, but it's a private. Sorry, it's public. Public limited company, PLC. PLC, it's public here, limited, like it can be listed on the stock exchange. But we have in this type here limited liability for the shareholders. And this is equal, it's equal to corporations. In corporations we have 2 types. Some of them publicly traded and some of them privately traded. But this time is public limited company. Public limited company. I mean, this is not available in all states, in all countries. Some countries have BLC, some countries have, it depends on the jurisdictions. Some of them have corporations. And sometimes, as you can look here and see, it can be a little bit difficult to understand the difference between the 2 types, because some companies have the same points, the same advantage, the same disadvantage. Like this type, for example, public limited company, PLC, is equal to corporation. So if I ask you, I'm not going to ask you to differentiate between PLC and corporation, because practically they're doing the same thing. They have the shares. Similar here, see that? Similar. Corporation in the USA. They have shares, open market, publicly listed in the stock exchange. And we have the flexibility to increase the amount of money. So you're going to face sometimes you will be faced with many similarities between many types. We still have 2 types to finish with. Number 9 is sole proprietorship. It's one person having his own business. Only one person. No, just leave it. Just take the slides as they are. Chapter 5 and chapter 6. You can study from the slides if you like. Okay? 5 and 6 only. In this time, sole proprietorship, المالك الوحيد. We have no separation. We cannot separate between you as an owner and the entity. You are the entity and the entity is you. One person, one business. One person, one business. We have no separation. So the debts of the business are the debts of the owner. If I have my own business as a sole trader, sole proprietorship, Malik Wahid, I will be responsible for the debt of my business. I cannot say, well, I have limited liability. If I want to have limited liability, I can go for the LLC, limited liability company. As one person, I can have my own company, but in this time, it's not. In this time, like people you can see in the street, in Gaza City here, how many shops you have? Many of them. Look on Umar Mukhtar Street, for example. Those stores and those supermarkets, they have only one person, and he's the only owner. That we have sole proprietorship, sole trader, having unlimited liability. Unlimited liability. We can define it as, Jada.
A person does business in his or her own
Name.
A person does business in his or her own name, and there's only one owner.
Only one owner. And even in tax here, what kind of tax will be? It's income tax. It's not business tax, income. Because look at somebody having his own store selling clothes or makeup. This person makes income. He makes income. At the end of the year, looks how much money he makes or he made. At that amount of money, it's an income. We have to pay tax for that. Income tax, not the business tax. Such entity, you can choose the name you like. Even if it's in your name, it's Jaidat name or Haneen's name, you can choose any name. You can choose like any famous name in any country. You can call your business or your entity the name you like. We call it trade name. اسم التجاري, اسم التجاري. Or you can have as well. You can have business account. This account will not be in your personal name. No, it's for your business. This account only for the use of the business only. The last slide we have to finish with, because I give you the chance to make the presentation now, the trust company. The last point in this chapter, it's called a trust company. شركات التأمين يعني تأمين trust company. We have three types of trust companies. Three types. Number one is called independent partnership. Number two is bank. And number three is law firm. We are talking about the trust. This trust in business, it can be only located in some companies, not all companies. We will not be able to trust such companies our money. Like if you invest your money in a bank, you save money in the bank because you trust that bank. You will not be able sometimes to trust some people, but the bank, because it has a brand name, reputation, investing in money, then you can trust the bank. You can invest your money in such bank here, which here specializes in being a trustee. Various kinds of trusts. Management here, managing states. Managing state here, what do we mean by state? عقارات. State, managing states and investing in money and trusting in money. And means here, trust name refer to the ability of the institute, of the business entity, its own ability as a trust here department to act, acting as a trustee. So the company itself, the business entity, like the bank, like the law firm, lawyer, will act as a trustee, مؤتمن, trustee, who is, we can define it as someone, Samiha?
Someone who administers financial assets on behalf of another.
Simple. Trustee is someone, can be a bank, financial partnership, law firm. Someone can administer my money on my behalf. It's not easy to trust someone in your money, isn't it? حتى المال والبنون, المال قبل البنون, زينة الحياة الدنيا. المال, people look after the money. People love money so much. Not only in our society, in all societies. Money, for many people, for most people, money comes first. Now, to trust someone in your money, it's not something easy. Now, you give the money to someone you trust, and this can be the bank, this can be the lawyer, this can be financial institute, like a partnership, for example. And those people, those entities will do what? Will do many things for you. Will look after the money. They might look after the money. They might save it for you. They may invest this money for you. They may pay the bills for you. Those trustees, they may pay gifts. They may take any transaction on behalf of the owner. And these, we call them the trustees, and these trustees can be can be bank, and the bank is a company. The bank is a company. Law firm is a company, or it's a business entity. Independent partnership, it can be financial company, financial entity. Okay, well, thanks very much for your time, and I would have to see you next week with the next chapter, which will have to be the last chapter we have in this semester. Thanks very much, and see you next week.
That's East India. This is the logo and this is the currency of this company. Although the Dutch East India obtained the franchise from the period of in the Morocco, but the success of both the Dutch East India and the British in the Gulf compared to the Red Sea, it was largest. The fall of the horrors of the Portuguese beginning to enter the Dutch and the British to the Middle East market to intensify their trades in Bandar, Basra and Bandar Abbas. Bandar Abbas became in the 150 years a center of commercial activity and political Dutch, British and France in the Gulf. It was not long until the Dutch commercial station became in Bandar Abbas the most active and successful than the British. And the beginning trading in sugar, spices, Indian cotton cloth, and iron, and many things. In the Gulf region, the Dutch signed an agreement with the Shah Abbas on the trade in silk, which obtained the right of a free trade on the side of the Persian for the Gulf return to the buying a center amount of the silk per year from the king. The Dutch become, with the beginning of the 17th century, the dominant naval power in the Indian Ocean, and the Belgians allowed the Dutch and the British to trade in their country because they accepted the mentality assistance in expanding their attention to dominate the region and impose their supremacy than the English, and the Dutch commit an alliance with their economic interest in the Gulf atop the commercial advantage which they only had received from Persian. With the outcome of the war, that happened in Europe, English lost their agencies in business in the Gulf and the Bandar Abbas, and the Dutch East India Company became alone and obtained these agencies and become the main provider of spices in the Persia and the Persian Gulf and achieved commercial success there. Dutch East India Company and the East India Company contribute as it is Portuguese before. They use force to get the trade agreement and take its human agency in the Indian Ocean ports, and follow the system of the Portuguese in issuing permits to cross the jurisdiction in order to facilitate achieving their goals of trade without taking into account any local business in the community in the Indian Ocean. They use the force to take an agreement in any area. Dutch and English traders follow the system of the trade between the ports in addition to export trade, and which they follow in the Indian Ocean, which lead to export of a huge amount of commercial goods to European market. They turn from the to export products to the European market. This lead growth from the trade to enter into a new area in New Zealand known as Golden Comfort Convent, which saw over the overall success of growth on the both the art and handicrafts. The art and handicrafts, and on other hand, decline for a business operation in the Gulf, which leads to the end of cities of Ottoman and Persian Gulf Asian trade, and the rise of the new cities such as Muscat, Bandar Abbas, and Bushehr. And the end, they become strong, and with the war that happened between the France and the British, the Dutch become to decline and to weak with the bad relationship with the Ottoman. They lost their authorities and they agencies and closed in the 1753.